Can you guess who the next economic superpower will be? We can bet it's a country that would take you by surprise. Long gone are the days of the global West being the hub of economic activity. Now, countries like China and India have snatched the baton and are leading the race. Don't go anywhere. We are going to show you how India is on its way to becoming the next economic superpower. To nobody's surprise, the most significant development in the world economy in recent decades has been China's rise to glory. But you can't ignore the emergence of its neighbor, India, as a possible new economic giant. In fact, India has surpassed the UK as the fifth largest economy in the world. By 2030, economists predict that the 1.4 billion person country will pass the US and China to take third position. How did this even happen? We'll tell you all about it. According to a recent study, China and India will overtake the United States and Western Europe as the world's two most powerful economies in the coming decades. The research is dependent on productivity growth and demographics, so variables like U.S. immigration policy, China's shift away from the free market, and others will have an impact on how influential different countries will be in the future of the world economy. The study predicts that by the year 2100, China's portion of global GDP will increase from 16% to 27%, while the U.S. share will fall from 16% to 12%. According to the report, Western Europe's share of GDP would decline to 12% in 2100, while India's share will increase to 16% in 2100. The total GDP of China and India would increase from 23% in 2017 to 43% in 2100, according to the report. Not too long ago, images of snake charmers, cows roaming the streets, and people riding elephants were used to represent India in the West. But during the past 75 years, India has achieved strides in a number of industries, including biotechnology, telecommunications, agriculture, and energy generation. More than 750 million Indians use the internet, which is another indication of how swiftly the nation is advancing in the digital age. The day when desperation and poverty were idealized in popular culture has long since passed. They're currently trying to surpass China as the top generator of renewable energy worldwide and expanding trading links with both the East and the West in an effort to establish itself as a global superpower. There's no doubt that the world community has never looked at India with such anticipation. These rising expectations are mostly caused by Russia's conflict in Ukraine. India is becoming a more significant player on the global stage, and it currently ranks third in terms of purchasing power parity and is the fifth largest economy in the world by GDP. India's foreign policies are working to its advantage thanks to its non-aligned stance. But on the domestic front, India still has a lot of work to do. By 2025, the Indian government projects that its GDP would be worth $5 trillion. But without significant economic reforms, this may only be a faraway dream for the biggest democracy on earth. Even 75 years after gaining its independence, the nation continues to face significant difficulties due to concerns with language and religion, unemployment, factionalized elites, and social divisions based on caste. Over the past 8 years, tensions between Muslims and Hindus have gotten progressively worse. The British divide and rule strategy appears to be making a comeback in some way. Hate speech is on the upswing in the nation, as seen by the recent words made by a BJP party official in power that were Islamophobic. The country's racial tensions have never received Prime Minister Narendra Modi's strong condemnation or even a passing comment. It's concerning that India placed 150th out of 180 nations in Reporters Without Borders' 2022 Press Freedom Index. This is India's all-time lowest position. With an AFI score of 0.352, India ranks low in the Worldwide Academic Freedom Index, alongside nations like Saudi Arabia and Libya. The 2021 Global Hunger Index placed India 101st out of 116 nations. Approximately 190 million children go to bed without eating each night, and almost 25% of youngsters are underweight. So, it should come as no surprise that India's position in the Global Happiness Index has dropped to 140, below Pakistan, Bangladesh, and China. The nation is becoming more and more unhappy and dissatisfied. Also, India has devoted a lot of time and money over the past 7 decades to resolving security issues with its neighbors, Pakistan on the one hand and China on the other. There's no question that these issues cannot be ignored, but it's crucial for India to focus its efforts on resolving its domestic problems. Almost half of their population is younger than 25, so they'll have to make sure that its youth have access to education, jobs, and happiness. India's goal of becoming a world superpower could take another 75 years to realize without this paradigm shift. For a long time, India was viewed as China's inferior because of its bureaucracy and sclerotic, out-of-control state sector. Although it still faces significant infrastructural and poverty issues, it's starting to challenge its neighbor thanks to economic growth rates that were formerly Beijing's source of pride. Looking ahead, India appears poised to keep moving up the world rankings. All things considered, we predict that during the next 10 years, India will pass both Germany and Japan to become the third largest economy in the world. Their capacity to expand its manufacturing industry and dethrone China as the world's top exporter will be crucial to its continued progress. They've already profited from a sizable educated middle class, which helped in the growth of the nation's top-tier pharmaceutical and information technology industries. Additionally, there's a healthy consumer demand there, which makes up approximately 55% of the economy, compared to less than 40% in China. The challenge now is to take use of its young working population to position itself as a manufacturing power to compete with China, whose competitive edge is being eroded by an aging labor force and rising pay levels. Now, according to S&P Global and Morgan Stanley, India is on track to surpass Japan and Germany to become the third largest economy in the world. The forecast from S&P is based on the assumption that India's nominal annual GDP growth will average 6.3% through 2030. In a similar vein, Morgan Stanley predicts that by 2031, India's GDP will have more than doubled from current levels. They're set up for an economic boom driven by manufacturing investment, outsourcing, the energy shift, and the nation's cutting-edge digital infrastructure. The production-linked incentive scheme, which increases manufacturing and exports, is the government of India's principal tool for achieving its goals of becoming a magnet for foreign investors and a manufacturing powerhouse. Similarly, Morgan Stanley predicts that manufacturing will contribute 21% of Indian GDP by 2031, up from its present 15.6%, which suggests a potential growth in manufacturing revenue of up to 3 times its current $447 billion level. More than ever, multinationals are optimistic about making investments in India as the government promotes investment by creating infrastructure and providing land for industries. According to analysts, India's advantages include abundant low-cost labor, the low cost of manufacturing, openness to investment, business-friendly legislation, and a young populace with a strong appetite for consumption. These elements make India a desirable option for the establishment of manufacturing hubs through the end of the decade. But wait, it's not all smooth sailing. The global recession is a major obstacle that might derail Morgan Stanley's forecast because India has a highly trade-dependent economy and about 20% of its output is exported. The U.S. Investment Bank also listed the availability of trained workers, unfavorable geopolitical developments, and policy mistakes that could result from electing a weaker government. A slowdown in the global economy could harm India's export prospects. Makes us wonder that in a time when the global economy is being clouded by a sharper than expected recession, how will India's GDP growth fare? Despite all that, India is set to record a GDP growth rate of about 7% this fiscal year and roughly 6.5% the following year, making it an exception in a globe that faces threats of slowdown and even recession. It won't be simple because India will also experience tremendous headwinds. But according to IMF predictions, there are 3 main patterns. 1. India still has a stronger economy than many other countries, including the UK. Aside from China, most countries' economies are expected to continue to deteriorate in the coming year. And 3. Mature economies that are also major export destinations for India, like Europe and the UK, may be on the verge of a recession next year. Is it too early to applaud, or could there be an upset in India's way to economic stardom? Let us know in the comments below, and if you like this video, be sure to watch this one next.